What does real-world success in business actually look like? Welcome to Bearcats Mean Business, the official podcast of the University of Cincinnati's Carl H. Lindner College of Business, where inspiring career stories, honest lessons, and fresh business perspectives from the people building impact in the real world come together. Tune in for inspiration, practical business insights, and forward-looking thought leadership on how ambition turns into action. And now, for today's episode.
Leigh, it's such a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's always a pleasure.
There are many things for us to explore today, but one of them is to dig a little bit into your personal story, because I love your inspiration and I want others to benefit from it. And in particular, if we could, I'd love to talk about your experience as a first-generation college student. I mean, you and your sisters were all first-gen. I'm increasingly just taken, and I learned so much from the first-generation students here. We've doubled multiple years now, the number of first-gen. But when you look back, what was that experience like, and more maybe importantly, what lessons do you still carry from that time in your life, navigating college as a first-generation student?
Yeah, it's a great question. It was a complete unknown. I think you go into it, especially with our background, like you go into it pretty blind. Like I didn't have a ton of help and guidance on, what paths to take. My mom was working full time. She was pretty adamant that I go to college, right? So she was, for myself and my sister, she was, I honestly, I always joke, like I didn't know there was another option, right? Like it was like she talked about like, you're going to college, right? And so I really didn't think I thought that was the path, and you just figured out the path, right? But figuring out the path was different. Like I said, I didn't have a lot of guidance. I knew at the time I liked science a lot. And so I thought, well, I'll go into science. And I started in veterinary medicine and realized, I got a summer job at a vet and realized, vets, world-class vets don't cry every time they have to put an animal to sleep.
Oh, stop.
And I literally cried every time. And even the vet that I was working for, he's a very, very nice gentleman. He was like, maybe this isn't the path for you, right? So, I went around the science route quite a bit. Ended up in geology, honestly, because I really liked chemistry, but I always looked at chemistry in geology as sort of the natural essence of chemistry. Like it's, I used to call it God's chemistry, right? Like this is how God does it, right? Chemistry is kind of man's imitation, trying to figure out what God does naturally in the world. And so I looked at that as, like something I was just very interested in. But, it was difficult for me. I worked multiple jobs through college. I always had a job or two through college. When I started my college career, I was working 40 hours a week and going to college full time. And so, and again, you don't, as a young kid, especially for me at least, I didn't realize what I was doing, right? I was just doing
it.
Right. Yeah. And it was one of my professors who grabbed me because I was constantly falling asleep in her class. And she was like, what's going on? And I apologized. I said, I show up at work at 6 a.m. I work until X. I then drive to class. I sit in class and I have to go to work after this. And she said, she was like, how many hours you work? And I said, I work 40 hours a week. She's like, you realize you're working 2 full-time jobs basically between college and I hadn't thought of it that way, So, but it's the sort of main thing I took from that. It's the work, right? The work ethic, and it's just put your head down and do it, right?
Amazing what you can get done.
Yeah, and this has happened a lot in my career. I joke, there's so many times in my career where I've been given opportunities that I'm not even sure that I, like looking back with experience, that I would have said yes, but it's this like naivety of like, I just want to do, right? And I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to figure it out. I sort of learned that with college, and college is a struggle for me. I went to public high school. I wasn't a great public high school student. I'll be really honest. I was between my parents being divorced and just being, in that kind of environment, I was an angry kid. Okay. I was very intelligent. I realized that after the fact, but when I got to college, I had to teach myself how to study. I had to teach myself, I had to do all this stuff by myself. And, you learn this independence and this work ethic that you carry, kind of throughout, not just college, but then, college and beyond. And then I went to grad school, and look, I love grad school because I went to grad school here at UC. I always say it absolutely changed the trajectory of my life, right? And I will always be grateful. I'll be grateful that they said yes, right? Because look, they didn't have to say yes to a geology graduate who was working for Schlumberger at the time, who, I wanted to get in my MBA. I had no business experience, right? Yeah. So I had personality, I think. I had a lot of personality. I walked in, I was like,
I'm ready to go.
I'm ready. I want to be in your program, and they said yes. And it was hard work, but again, you get through it, and it truly did change the trajectory of my life. But I think the constant was just hard work. Put your head down and do it.
Yeah.
And you'll figure it out.
But I love that, and that how well it served as well. I think I hear another piece to it. If we could just talk a little about your own career and leadership, you are such a model of interdisciplinary learning. I mean, you just talked about geology, starting as in the veterinary, moving to geology. But I also think of you as a musician with Suits Than Rock and personal passions, and then into business. Can you share a little bit about how you see these pieces fitting together, or even do they need to?
No, I don't think they need to.
Yeah.
I've always, I grew up sort of, watching my mom struggle to support 3 kids on her own with zero support, right? My dad disappeared. And so she was doing it on her own, right? And, you watch that as a kid and growing up, and you realize you got one life, right? And I want to be happy, and I want the people around me to be happy. And, if I'm not happy in something, I'm gonna change it, and I'm gonna go figure it out. And it's something I kind of promised myself early on, like with jobs, with whatever it is. If I'm not happy doing it, I'm gonna change it, and I'm gonna figure something else out. So I think that's one driver. I'm also a huge believer that you need to continue to challenge yourself with different things. And I think I'm a perfect example of that, right? I've done so many 180s. Right. Even within the company I'm at, I never dreamt of being a CEO. I really didn't. I fell in love with finance when I was in grad school. I really, really liked finance. And my goal was to get into finance, to work my way out, through finance orgs, to be an FP&A, to learn about the company, and to eventually become a CFO. I became a CFO at 40, right? And so, and I really distinctly remember talking to my wife about hey, I might have peaked early, right? I don't know. They say the average tenure of a CFO is 4 years. I don't know what we're going to do after this, right? it was this conversation of we may have to move, right? So I want to prep you. I was just fortunate enough to just be in a position where I could say yes to things. And I never would imagine that I would have had this opportunity. But it came, and it's so different than that. A CEO is a very, very different job, right? And you learn that over time. But between, that, and look, I'm already thinking about, I'm still pretty young. I've been in this job for a decade. I'm not going to be in it for another decade. Okay. Only because after a while you realize you might be holding the organization back. You're the old fogey, right? So I'm already thinking about what's next. And candidly, what's next for me will likely be something completely different, right? I don't know that I'll go into business. I may go into music. I may do other things, right?
The 180s have served you well.
Yeah, I just think you follow your passion, right? I've always done that. I've followed what feels right. And like I said earlier, and then you figure it out. Right, you work hard. I get asked by kids all the time, right? Younger students, what's the formula? It's almost when they hear
they want to.
They
want to hear it.
So what's the formula for CEO? Right, what plus what equals CEO in my career? And there is no formula, right? I am the absolute poster child for the fact that there's no formula. I sometimes joke well, do you have a geology undergrad? Because if you don't, I'm sorry, you're not going to get. But the hard work piece,
so critical.
You need, especially when you're young, just work hard and gain experience and follow. And the hard work becomes easier when you're doing something you truly enjoy and you're passionate about. The hard work is a lot easier. When you're not doing something you enjoy, hard work feels like hard work, right? When you're doing something you're passionate about, it really is a lot easier. And I've been very fortunate just to follow those paths, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's such a critical point around the hard work, because in part you're saying, some of these 180s, maybe all of them have been, it's time, I'm not enjoying this fully, I'm going to make a shift. But you didn't exactly take an easy next pivot. I mean, if I think about the Cincinnati Bell move when you joined in 2001, I mean, it was facing some very significant challenges. I think bankruptcy was actually a real concern, but it didn't scare you off.
Well, I'm not
Leigh?
sure. I might have been pretty naive at the time.
Okay, well,
as a young kid, like
but you saw something.
I did. I mean, right away you knew something was wrong, right? You got into you got the job, and like within months it was like something's amiss, right? Like people are very tense, right? And I remember
you also saw an opportunity.
I did. I think maybe it wasn't that I saw an opportunity. I was given opportunities.
Okay.
And I was, so I don't know that I would give myself as much credit as people saw something in me to say, go figure this out, and I would figure it out. And so they kept giving me these things to go figure out, and I would go somehow figure it out and just put my head down and work and figure it out. And to me, in that environment, I don't want to paint the picture that I was like, hey, there's all this tension, this company's not doing well, and this is a great opportunity for me. I was nervous as everybody else, right? Like I didn't know what was happening, but what I did know is that the people there were giving me responsibilities that I probably would never have gotten if I was somewhere else, right? I definitely look back and I was given opportunities that were well beyond, I think, my experience level. And these were several, I think, sink or swim opportunities. And I just happened to swim, right? And I think that goes back to, like, I put my head down. Yeah. And look, my graduate degree really taught me that, right? Your graduate degree, the massive thing that I gained from my graduate degree is, UC will pile more work on you than you think you can do, right? Until you do it. Right? And then you realize you will figure it out. And it's this concept of, like, you just put your head down, you don't panic, and you put one foot in front of the other, and you just do the work, right? And you organize yourself and you do the work. And it's almost like tears. Then you've completed this, now you go to the next thing, you do the work, right? It's no different in my career, right? No. And I think I was just lucky enough to, like, have people give me these kind of opportunities where it was a lot of hard work. I worked a lot of hours. It was sink or swim. I ended up, surviving through it and thriving in it. And by the time you get out on the other end, you look back and you realize I've gained so much valuable experience and so much valuable knowledge. And that's where I try to tell kids, that's when you become important, right? That's when you become valuable to an organization. When you put your head down, you do all this work, and then someone like me realizes, I've got a person next to me that I can count on, that if a problem comes up, they're on it. I don't have to worry about it. And their experience helps them level it, like, not panic, level, do the work, manage the people, get it done in the right ways, and move on. And that comes with experience.
Oh, right? Absolutely. A leader said to me recently, Leigh, and I'm just holding it dear and thinking even about our students for the fall, that learning comes through three things. It comes through struggle, failure, and conflict. And as I thought about that, and it was a funny line, because he kept saying, I just keep learning. So you have all three. But I want students to see that's the double-edged sword. Is it's not saying you're going to love it and it's going to always feel great, but there's magic in those challenges.
And it's really spot on. I think where the danger is for young people, and I've seen this in people throughout my career that I've dealt with, that when you want to put the perfect resume together, right, and you want to be, you want to go, well, I'm going to go do this job, and I'm going to just kill it, and I'm going to do a great job, and I'm going to ace everything I'm given, and then I'm going to move to this thing, and I'm going to ace everything I'm given, and then I'm going to ace everything I'm given over here. it doesn't work like that, right? Somebody, and I had this conversation earlier this week with a graduate. They asked, like, what are some of the things you learn? And I laughed. I said, someone once told me, like, you hardly ever make a wrong decision. It seems like you always make the right decisions. And I laughed, and I was like, it's because I've made so many bad decisions, right? And that's there's
see that,
but there's
right?
so much truth in it.
It is.
Right? You have to,
myself.
and I continue to. I continue to make decisions where I'm like, well, I'm going to learn from that, right? Here's what I've learned from this, like error, And at a CEO level, what becomes really important is that you have to realize you're not going to get everything right. Mm-hmm. Your job is to solve problems, and you're going to make mistakes. You're going to have errors in judgment, but you can fix them. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just at my level, some
that
of my errors
and confidence is
some
so
of my
key.
errors are like hundreds of millions of dollars
absolutely.
of like, hey, I've got to make this decision. Mm-hmm. What if you're off? Well, you have to understand how to pivot and correct. Mm-hmm. Right?
And how to know quickly that you might be off, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm. And so that's the value in that experience. And so you're never going to stop making mistakes. And I hope you never do, because that's how you learn.
Let's talk a little bit more about kind of your leadership approach, because you've had, and I mean, I can just name a few, but some very significant company-defining strategic decisions in your career, from the investment in fiber, the decision to go private, the rebrand from Cincinnati Bell to altafiber. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty, to say the very least, in those big ideas. I mean, I think my first question is, what are the principles that ground you in that uncertainty of the big decisions?
That's a great question. For me, it's as simple as, I've become very good at listening to my heart and understanding, like, if I feel like it's the right decision, then it's the right decision, and then going with it. I learned really early on through watching people around me, both good and bad, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I've had a lot of great mentors and people around me that I've had the opportunity to work around that have been incredible, but I've watched them not only succeed in things, but make mistakes in things. And one of the things I learned really early on was that in business, momentum is key, right? You can sit and overanalyze anything, right?
Paralysis.
And it happens, and it's easy to do. Mm-hmm. As leaders, you have to say, look, in my heart, and through the data and everything. I'm a data geek, so I know what to look at, and I've got the experience and like why and what matters. But when you make the decision, make it right. And I've gotten to the point where I make decisions and I sleep well at night because I've learned to make them for the right reasons. And that's the other thing that's a challenge, right? I think with leaders, these roles are dangerous. Right. And I always say, like, the day I got the title, I became the funniest person in the room. Right. Became the most popular. I became very highly paid. Mm-hmm. Right. And I became, and all of this can go to your head.
It really can.
Right. And I think the best leaders understand that immediately and find ways to counterbalance it and stay humble. And divorce themselves from their egos, right? And just say, and I do a lot of things really actively, like very intentionally, to like manage my ego, because I'm human, right? I have an ego, and I'll give you an example. Like I love. There's an organization that my wife and I got involved with recently, and I won't name them. They're local. They do phenomenal work, but they actually called me up. The CEO called me up and said, we'd like to give you this award. And I said, I really appreciate that, but that's not why we do what we do. So I'm going to have to decline. But I told her, I said, look, the reason is, in my position, I get offered these things a lot. And I say no more than I say yes. The reason I say no is because I'm trying to manage. I don't want that to turn into why you do things. Mm-hmm. And I think if you're thrown accolades all the time, I'm a human being. Like, you get used to it, and that starts. Yes, and that starts becoming the engine, the driver, and why you do things. And I think it's always helpful to have things that you consciously do to manage that part of you.
I love that with intentionality.
Yeah, and look, music is another thing. I think you and I have talked about this before. I started taking music very seriously because it's so humbling, right? I take jazz, right? Yeah. I still, look, I've been taking jazz now for 10 years. I still leave lessons like I'm an idiot. But I'm getting better and better and better and better at it. It's a language. Music is a language. So I'm learning a language. 2, it's a language that I'm not familiar with and I have no background in, right? And so learning to read music is an example in my 50s, right? Challenging, humbling, right? Every time I pick the instrument up, it's humbling, right? And I tell people, you have something in your life that humbles you, right? That keeps you grounded and balanced, right? And then your family always keeps you balanced.
They're very
right?
helpful with that.
They're great at knocking you down as soon as you feel, a
Dad.
little too high on yourself, and wham! I've got so many stories about that I could tell. But
I love that example of music as well, and you and I have talked about that before. I was thinking about it actually related this morning. There was a great article about the power of sports with the World Cup, and I thought, similar to music, there's the people around you, right? Yeah. Even if it feels like it's an individual accomplishment, there are others.
Yeah.
Like think about jazz, just the power of a jazz ensemble. But I think about soccer and just the flow of going on. But the other piece is there is always, always, always a level above. Mm-hmm. In fact, there are many. Yeah. And it's humbling. Even as you feel so good, you go, oh my goodness.
Oh,
that's a wow, right? Transcendental.
As a musician, the last thing you want to go on is go. You never want to go online and Google good guitar players, right? Like you're going to go, I'm going to quit because that kid looks like he's 8 and he is way better than I am. So, right. And it's absolutely true, right? It is. There are so many naturally talented people. And really what you have to what you start to figure out is you give yourself grace on learning and the constant development and the learning, and that's the piece that I'm such a big believer in, and it's the reason why I still do what I do, because I'm still learning every day. There are still things in the business that change where I'm like, this is so cool. I've not experienced this before, whether it's a kind of a leadership change or like some kind of cultural change or some kind of business change or competitive change. It's like it's constantly evolving, and we're constantly changing. It's like it's always giving us things to learn. And if you don't have that, I always tell people, look, that's one of the key elements in any kind of work. You want to look for, do you work with good people? Mm-hmm. Are you treated fairly? And are you learning? And if you have those 3 components,
it's the secret sauce.
You're doing pretty well, right? And so even if you're looking at the grass being greener somewhere else, I would take a pause and really, really consider what you have, because those are 3 very special things. Right?
You can make so much of them.
Yes.
As well. You've mentioned the organizations you give back more as a volunteer, and you're so involved. I mean, at UC alone, you're the chair of our UC Foundation, which is a big role and so valued from all of us here at UC. You're on my cabinet, which I always value your critical friendship. United Way. I mean, I know that's a long list, but I think something I really always try to help, especially our students, understand, because it goes, wait a minute, this is a very busy person. And we could start running through all these things. You go, why?
Yeah.
Could you share, what's the intrinsic motivation there? Because it's stretching you, I'm sure.
Yeah, sometimes it does. You get used to the cadence and the schedule. I've gotten a little better at managing, I've learned you can't be chairs of 3 organizations at once, right? So that's pretty. That's again, constant learning. But at some point in my career, I was working really hard. I was being rewarded. I was being promoted, and it just didn't feel good. And so I had this conversation with a good friend of mine who worked with us, and I was talking to him about it. And he's like, "You ever think about getting involved?" And he mentioned an organization here locally, Cancer Free Kids, and I went to one of their dinners, and I kind of realized that was the piece in my life that I was missing. Right, I was so fortunate to be where I'm at and come from where I came from, that, part of me just wanted to give back that fortune, like to say, look, it's as important to pay it forward, right, to others, right? And it's like the scholarships here, and the reason why I love being involved with the foundation, and like these are very important things when you're fortunate enough to, experience the things in life that I've experienced. You have to take a responsibility and give back. And I really feel like it is our responsibility as leaders. And I think most leaders think like this, right? There are obviously, I think, those out there that may not, but I think the vast majority of leaders do. The vast majority of leaders think about like, look, giving back is a key part of, and they want to from the heart, right? And so that sort of shifted in my life, and then look, as you get higher up in an organization, you get more opportunities to give back also, and I think that's important. And so the more I was asked, the more I got engaged with different organizations, and then again, learning, right? I learned the things that like I was passionate about, the things that maybe I wasn't as passionate about.
Sure.
And so you learn where your involvement is important, because you do want to follow your passion, especially when you're giving back in a philanthropy kind of philanthropic situation. But it was natural, and it's honestly a very important part of my job now. And the other piece, look, and look, it's not all totally selfless. Part of being a CEO is getting out in the community and meeting people.
Right.
I have met more people in the community, more leaders, and built more relationships through being involved with organizations like the Chamber, Arts Wave, United Way, like name the organization. You get to know people at a whole nother level when you're involved in those organizations, and that's truly important. And people get to know you at another level. You're not just the CEO of Altafiber. You're Leigh, and I've gotten to know Leigh, and that's massively important. It is. Right. And so don't underestimate the value of that as you grow in your career. If you're young, it's so important to have that tentacle too, and get people to get to know you in that sense also.
I just love that point, Leigh. I mean, I've seen that in our United Way board. It gives me a new respect, not only for the individuals, but for our city, that you can fill a room with leaders of that caliber. Talk about time, talent, and treasure. I mean, the expense of that room, let alone the incredible wisdom.
Yeah. It's cool.
It's cool. It is. I always leave just going, man, we have a great city. We care about each other. We care about making it better. And we're all coming at it from different angles.
It's
Imagine
really inspiring.
What we can do. It is.
It's really inspiring. And then I think it's also, again, I go back to staying humble and understanding that you really do get a really good understanding that people aren't as fortunate as you are, and there's a need in the community. And
talk about humbling.
Yeah, and you do have I feel like I have an obligation as a leader in the city to try to do everything I can to lift the city, right, and the community up as much as I can. So if I can do that by using talents that I've grown through business, and I can then transplant those talents and try to solve problems.
And they are transferable.
Yeah,
they are.
100%.
Absolutely.
I mean, look, I'm chairing the United Way. Campaign.
I know.
And so honestly, it's an honor. And we had a great meeting yesterday, Moira and I, and the CEO of the United Way. We had a great meeting with someone, and we were explaining about just how the United Way has developed from where it was to where it is today, and how it is really building a foundation that I'm now starting to see hope of solving very difficult long-term problems.
Yeah, the more wicked problems.
Yes,
right? Systemic.
And the systemic problems. And you can see a path forward, and you're like, it's not going to happen tomorrow, but my gosh, these building blocks.
We're all rowing in the same direction, and that's exciting.
Are starting to come together.
Yeah.
Right? And it's things like that. I mean, I leave meetings like that, and I'm jazzed. Right? I had a great day, the rest of my day yesterday, from that one meeting, because I was so excited about, I love hearing and talking about this stuff, and getting people to understand, you see the light bulbs go off, and others are like, wow, right? This is cool stuff. Like,
that
it really is.
I'd love to get your views on our future leaders here at UC. I mean, if I may, and you know this well from serving on the cabinet, we invented co-op, but we're really making a step change to think about co-op not as a thing you do, an experience you have, but as this engine to transformational learning that happens, including in an MBA, who's not doing a traditional co-op, but it's the connective tissue between absolutely our partners in the city and in industry and our alumni linked to our faculty and staff experts, and then always with the students in mind. And how do you get that working as an engine that hums and helps challenge and push and energize the learning that's possible? I mean, that's what wakes me up every day, because it's so exciting to see the changes in students that are possible. But you sit in a different seat. You know the changes happening in the industry. What qualities do you think are just critical that we use that engine to hone?
That's a great question. What we look for, and we see this in certain young people that we've hired. We've been honestly amazed at some of the things that come out of some of the young folks, even interns that we see come through the organization. Critical thinking is in problem solving, in that like creativity, like the combination, that like trifecta is going to be massively important, right? I think understanding the tech is going to be like a baseline, right? It's going to be like table stakes, right?
Agree.
Like we're going to kind of assume you understand the tech. Like right now,
no, we better make sure they live up to that assumption.
Right.
But
I assume because you're X younger than I am, that you're way better at the tech than I am, right? It's combining their knowledge of the tech with my experience in business and trying to get them to understand sort of my experience in the business. And, learning quickly, what you see out of these kids is like they can absorb things very quickly. And, I've said this to you before, like, when you hear so many things about the young people, it's like,
you do.
And I laugh. I'm like, you go back to the 60s, and I'm sure they said the same thing. The 70s, they said the same thing. Every generation looks at the youth and they're like, we're done, right? And every time I hear that, I'm like, go spend some time at UC.
It's true.
Like if
you'll
have
think
hope
and faith
right?
in this
next
generation.
If you think that, go spend some time with some of these students, because they're rock stars. Like I do,
and they're different.
They're different.
They are.
But man, they are rock stars, right? And I think getting them the experience in business and getting them in the right places, and I think getting them to understand also that I think some of them come in with expectations that are like, like when I get questions like, okay, what are the 3 steps to CEO, right? Well, there's probably going to be more than 3 steps, right? I think understanding that it's going to be work, right? And I actually say this, I got this from my former boss, and it was like, I don't know how many times, I totally ripped this off, and I'm sure he ripped it off from somebody, but I love it. I say it so many times that, he said, in your 20s, you party, in your 30s, you learn, in your 40s, you earn, in your 50s, you mentor, in your 60s, you get out, right? And if you look at a career, that's not that far off, right? And for 20 and 30-year-olds, what they have to understand is, one, enjoy life, but work really hard and learn. Really hard. And it's going to take time, right? And the expectations to earn and like all these things that like these glittery things that people in front, it will come, right? But it comes with experience.
And climbing that learning curve.
Correct. It comes with experience. So give yourself a little bit of grace, work hard, and understand that's going to happen. And the other thing I try to impart on kids is that like do it while you're young, because your life changes too, right? Like look, I got married at like 30 something, and you start having kids, and that's a change, right? And I mean, when I had my first kid, my priorities flipped overnight. Yeah. Right.
Literally.
And overnight.
I know.
And whether that's a path you want or not, it doesn't matter. There are going to be life changes that you're going to experience, that your priorities may shift, and that's okay. Right. But take advantage of the time you have in the situation you're in, understand it, and just work really hard and learn. And it's that's how you gain experience, right? And then, but before you know it, you're going to turn around, you're going to be like, I know all this. This is great. I am in a place where I feel comfortable. I am earning. I am like all this stuff I am the CEO now, right? trust me, you've got plenty of CEOs in this building that you're teaching.
Oh, we do. I appreciate that. And I just appreciate you, Leigh. I appreciate your wisdom, your engagement. I think the put your head down, work hard, just learn through the grind, but also
have fun.
Yeah, have fun and lean into the problems.
Yeah.
I mean, those challenges will pay off.
The one thing that I would probably, you know this about kind of my style too. Like, I use humor a lot to break tension. I do that very intentionally, right? Because, there's another thing I got from being young and watching my mom struggle. It's like, look, there are much more serious things in life, right? What we do is serious, and we do take it very serious, but we're not, saving lives, and we're not a doctor on with a patient on a table.
Laugh at ourselves.
Make fun of yourself, right? Have some fun, right? Enjoy each other, right? Break the tension. Try to enjoy the situations you're in, and I think that's critically important. Also, I think we especially with what's going on in society and all the tension in society right now, just treat each other with kindness and have fun with one another and realize that like we're so similar, right? Everyone across the world. I mean, you mentioned the World Cup earlier.
Yeah.
I think. Look, that's one thing that I absolutely
that
love seeing from the World Cup.
I
is that,
just love it.
Like you get
Makes my heart full.
You really do. You get people, and we tell our kids this. I was lucky enough to travel as a young man. You learn that everyone around the world is similar, right? They all have similar, hopes and dreams and passions, and like you have so much in common with the people around the world that. Like, just realize that and get to know people and be kind and serve others and just really, and I say that like, if you asked, I have a tagline like in our organization, I end everything with be safe, be kind, and serve others, right? And I'm serious about it. Like, just
it's a good tagline, Leigh.
Be kind to people and enjoy things, enjoy building those relationships, and and good things will happen naturally.
They absolutely will.
Right.
Thank you, Leigh. Yeah. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, always.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Bearcats Mean Business. If today's episode sparked a new idea, challenged your thinking, or helped you see your path a little more clearly, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share the episode with someone in your network. Thanks for being part of the conversation. And remember, real-world success begins here at Lindner.